Blaise Pascal, the very famous French philosopher and scientist, 17th century. He said, all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. You will not ever get to know God unless you can get to the field of all possibilities. As St. Mark put it, with God all things are possible. Now that leaves nothing out. And the way that you do that is you go through the layers of your mind, from the surface, where the chatter is, to just below the surface, where the analyzing is, the intellectual violence, where you have to pick and tear everything apart, figure it all out. Lower to synthesis, where you see how all things are brought and held together. Lower to where you quiet the mind. And ultimately, coming to rest in the field of all possibilities, the limitless field. And here, in this place of rest, where you empty the mind of all thoughts, between your thoughts, through the process of meditation or getting quiet or chanting or prayer or whatever you want to call that activity of sitting quietly alone, twice a day at least, for 30 minutes, you will come to know God. You will find in that field of all possibilities that nothing at all is impossible. Nothing. This is the place where Jesus performed his miracles. This is the place where our Sai Baba can manifest the gift of fish and loaves. And once the people say to him, how can you do that? How can you just manifest? I don't know. He said, how can you not? He is just there. Just like looking at a pond and seeing that the essence of a pond is not the surface, where all the disturbances are, but below, where you get below the disturbances. In the mind, the surface is the chatter, the endless repetition of thoughts. And you know what that is? Just an endless repetition of the inventory of beliefs that have been handed to you by other people, and all of your opinions about them. When you get past those, you get to that peaceful place, that knowing. And after you get good at getting quiet and craving it, you will begin to see that not only is it meditation as a peaceful, beautiful, powerful experience, but what you bring back from the meditation is even more significant. And what you bring back is a solution of finding the key where you dropped it. What you bring back from that experience is a sense of peace and bliss and love and tolerance and kindness. All of the characteristics of your higher self, of your sacred self. As you tame your ego, you no longer have the possibility of being offended. You have made the decision to be free. And being able to work on those, one moment, one present moment at a time, will bring you to an understanding of what Robert Frost said in his poetry. He said, we all sit around in a ring and suppose, while the secret sits in the center and knows. And the secret that sits in the center and knows is really invisible, surrounded by form. In Zen they say it's the space between the bars that holds the tiger. It's the silence between the notes that makes the music. It's not the note, it's the silence between. What allows a vase to be a vase is not the form, it's not the material, it's the space inside. If you hit and break it, the vase, all the material is still there, no vase. You have to have the space surrounded by form. That's who you are, space. Inner, divine, empty, quiet, formless, eternal space, surrounded by a garage where you park your soul. In Sailing to Byzantium, William Butler Yeats put it this way. He said, an aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing, for every tatter in its mortal dress. Without that soul, without that divine, silent, empty, invisible, formless, eternal space within us, we're just tattered coats on a stick. Go within. Banish the doubt. Witness it. Get rid of all the labels. And know that you are here for one purpose and one purpose only: to find and serve God. And when you do, you will understand what the Quakers would say at every single Sunday morning service. They said, the service begins when the meeting is over. This meeting is over. Good night. God bless you.
Here's what Lao Tzu said in verse 29. Do you think you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. Everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin. Trying to grasp, we lose. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it too is a vessel of perfection. Just as you breathe in, breathe out. There is a time for being ahead, a time for being behind, a time for being in motion, a time for being at rest, a time for being vigorous, a time for being exhausted, a time for being safe, a time for being in danger. To the sage, all of life is a movement toward perfection. So what need has he for the excessive, the extravagant, or the extreme? There's a time for everything. Imagine if you knew this. If you really knew that what you were experiencing emotionally in your life was a part of what there is a time for, and that you're not really doing anything. Lao Tzu says it over and over again. You're not doing anything. You're being done. You're being done right now. You're one of the 10,000 things. And it is all being done, all of it. Like I do yoga every morning, or almost every morning, 5-6 days a week. I do this 90-minute Bikram yoga, this hot yoga. And this has helped me so much with just that simple little thing, just remembering what it says in verse 29 of the Tao. That there are times when you're in the midst of yoga, when you have a position where you have to put this foot out, and you have to turn this one down, and you have to get down here like this, and you have to take this arm, and I'm going to do it. And you have to do that for 60 seconds in a 110-degree room. That's after doing many other postures as well. There was a time when I would do that and I'd be so exhausted, and all I could think about was, when is this 60 seconds going to be up? Oh my God, when are we going to get through with this posture? When are we going to get onto where I can lie down on the floor? And finally, and I began to realize as this doing the Tao thing has really changed me dramatically, so that now when I'm in that position with one arm down and one arm up, and it is exhausting, and you're stretching, and you've got your arm right next to your ear, and you're holding on, that you say to yourself, there's a time for being exhausted, and there's a time for rest. There's a time for things not to work out. Imagine if you knew that in the midst of my working with my daughter, for example, when I see the struggle that she's going to, and I can stand back and say, there's a time for her to experience this. And there's a time for her not to experience it. I don't think there's any more all-pervasive theme in the Tao Te Ching than the idea of being a non-interferer. Do you, Stephen? I mean, isn't it? It's about not interfering, isn't it? It's about letting go. It's about allowing. It's about detaching. It's about disconnecting yourself from this belief that you are in charge of other people. I'm the father of 8 children and the father of motivation. That's what they tell me, so I've got... And as this father of 8 children, one of the things that I've recognized and what has made me, I think, a better parent, particularly even since I've been doing this, is my willingness to, I call it the bite your tongue verse of the Tao. Just hang back just for a second, just as you're about to interfere, just as you're about to lay it on and tell somebody else how they should be and what they should do and how they should do it, you step back and realize that what Khalil Gibran, the great Lebanese poet, in writing in The Prophet, said was just a basic truth. Your children are not your children. They are the products of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not for you. And you step back, and I can't even begin to tell you how freeing it is to realize that you don't have anything to do. You don't have anyone to control. You can be at peace.
So, what we have to do is learn how to take this ego of ours, this part of us that believes that who we are is what we have, and what we do, and what other people think of us. But remember, if you grow up believing that you are what you do, then when you don't, you aren't. And if you believe that you are what you have, when it's gone, you aren't. And if you believe that you are what other people think of you, your reputation, which we raise people to believe, I have to be concerned with what other people think of me. Take this ego and retrain it. And one of the ways that you do to retrain it is, first, you take this idea that the ego has of fear. What are you afraid of? Anybody out there, what are you afraid of? Shift from fear to curiosity. Become curious about what you're afraid of. That's what Lao Tzu taught me. Become curious about what you're afraid of. You're afraid of flying? Get curious about that. Get interested in that. You're afraid of snakes, you're afraid of disapproval, you're afraid... Just shift from fear and say, I'm going to become more curious about what I'm afraid of. And then take all of the things that you're attached to, like all of your photographs, like all of your furniture, like all of your clothing, like all of the stuff that you find so much attachment to, and start letting it go. Start letting it go. You know, the day that I turned that key on May the 11th in 2006, I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew there was a shift taking place. I felt freer than I'd ever felt, I think, in my life. In my mid-60s, out there on a whole new adventure. And here we are talking about it on national television, on PBS. Take that idea that you have to be attached to things and know that you came in with nothing, with no thing. And you're going to leave with nothing, with no thing. And understand that your life is a parenthesis in eternity. Live there without attachments. And then take your need to be in control of yourself, of others, of the situation, and shift from control to trust. Begin to have a trust. Lao Tzu is profound about this. In each one of the 81 verses, it comes up about 60 times as you look at letting go and letting God, allowing yourself to trust in your nature, allowing yourself to no longer believe that everything has to be controlled by me, and that other people no longer have to be in control of me as well. Begin to trust. Just like you did for the first 9 months. You trusted. Your nose showed up. Your height showed up. Your eyes showed up. Whatever. It all showed up. It's all perfect. It's all divine. So why not wander through your life and have this wonderful, peaceful knowing that it's all fine? And finally, shift from your sense of entitlement. Nobody can treat me that way. I'm entitled to have this. Well, I paid for that. I let go. I mean, that in 1 year, I let go of all of my entitlements. I don't feel I'm entitled to anything. I'm just here. Shift from entitlements to radical humility. Lao Tzu speaks about it so often. Stay humble. Stay low. The greatest leaders are the ones who do the least. The ones who stay back and just model and allow. And at the end of the day, in one of the verses of the Tao, it says, the people will say, we did it ourselves. We did it ourselves. In verse 49 of the Tao Te Ching, here's an exact quote. The sage is kind to the kind and kind to the unkind, because the nature of his being is kindness. And also, be wise and help all beings impartially, abandoning none. You know what I do? Just before I did this program, I have to admit I was nervous. I was humbled by it. Like, who are you, Wayne Dyer? Who are you to read the Tao and believe that you can interpret it on television and interpret it in a book and spend a year and say, like, I got real humble with that. And you know what I say? Tao, which is just another word for God, or Source, or Krishna, or Allah, or whatever you want to call it, guide me. Guide me now. I have that awareness before I come out. If you knew, it says in the Course in Miracles, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. Okay, let's go on to the next thought. To change. So you're changing from not trusting in your nature to trusting in your nature. You change your thought from I need more to what I call living contentment. What is this thing about more? It's the mantra of the ego, isn't it? I have to have more. I have to collect more stuff. I have to have more friends. I have to have more money. It's more, 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 more. When where you came from nowhere. You don't need anything. It's a continuous bombardment that we are all exposed to in this whole world of believing that we have to have more. It's one of the reasons why I love public television so much. You don't see ads on PBS. You don't have to be constantly exposed to the idea that you have to have more and you have to get more, and if you don't have this, then you're not complete, and so on. So we get bombarded with this idea of attracting more. And Lao Tzu says, live contentment. Live in a state of being contented. Here's verse 81, the last verse of the Tao Te Ching. My favorite translation of it, and I put it right into the book. Sages do not accumulate anything, but give everything to others. Having more, the more they give.
The idea of just saying to myself, okay, I'm going to go 19 years and never have a drink again. That's just enough to send you off on a binge, isn't it? But you can do easy things, and you can get anywhere from here. You ever hear the line, a journey of 1,000 miles? What? Begins with one step. That's right out of the Tao Te Ching. That was Lao Tzu. It's so simple. So when you think about balance in your life, think like this about being in balance. You have a dream. And your dream is to live a life that goes a certain way, that looks a certain way, that feels a certain way. You have a dream that you would like to be able to attract prosperity into your life, that you would like to live a prosperous life. My favorite example, I did it on the PBS show, of the lady sitting next to me from San Francisco who was flying back from Maui after having just done a wedding. And I said to her, what do you do? And she said, I'm a photographer. And I said, oh, how's it going? And she said, well, I'm never going to get rich at it. Now, this is just a thought. Is it true? I don't know if it's true. How can that be? How can you know if that's true, that you're never going to get rich? You don't know. So I said to her, well, would you like to get rich? This was what I always asked when people ask. Well, she said, well, of course. She said, who wouldn't want to be rich? Everybody wants to be able to buy the things they want. We all want that. I said, so let me see if I understand. You would like to get rich. That's your dream. But what you offer up to that dream is that it'll never happen. That's out of balance. That's the kind of balance I'm speaking about. Not the kind of balance that allows you to do these kinds of things. The kind of balance that you begin to realize that there's a misalignment, if you will, between what it is that you are thinking and what it is that you offer up in the way of habits to make those dreams a reality. I call it principles for creating habits to match your desire. Listen to this quote. It's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, want, like what you want, is a growing giant whom the coat of have was never large enough to cover. Want is a growing giant whom the coat of have was never large enough to cover. That is, what you want and what you have are completely and totally out of balance. And Lao Tzu says this to you through me. When you put your attention on what you intend to create and you stay aligned with the way, with the source from which you came, it will show up. It has to. It has to. So that all of the deficiencies, all of the things that you want but are not able to manifest, have not manifested yet into your life, all of it is not because the universe isn't working with you. It will. It's because you are not a vibrational match, an energetic match to what it is that you would like to create. And all today is about is learning to change the way you look at your life and understanding that the life that you're living will change just by your changing your opinion about it. It's so beautifully freeing to not be concerned any longer with whether or not what you would like to have is going to show up. If you would like to accomplish something, you must first expect it of yourself. And my question to you is, what do you expect of yourself? Do you expect to be able to perform miracles, to attract into your life the kind of prosperity that you are entitled to? Do you expect that you can manifest the kind of relationships that you would like? In order to be able to have these kinds of expectations for yourself, you have to make a dramatic change, a dramatic shift. You must change what's possible for you and what you believe is possible for you. Move from thinking in a rigid way to thinking and being flexible, soft, and allowing. From rigidity to softness. What a wonderful transformation that is. I was standing looking with my son Sans, and we were on Maui, and we were looking at water as water was going against some rocks and some cliffs and so on. And in these pictures, in this moment, I said to my son, I said, which do you think is stronger? The water or the cliff? The water or the rocks? Which one do you think is more powerful and stronger? And he said, well, he said the rocks. Obviously, they're stronger and they're bigger and all. I said, water is very, very patient, isn't it? How much chance do those rocks have if they want to survive? I mean, what chance do they have? That would, and Lao Tzu is speaking to us about understanding our nature by examining how nature works and then making it apply to our thoughts, so that a soft thought, a thought that isn't a rigid thought, a thought that doesn't say you have to be this way or you have to be that way, a thought that is not stiff, a thought that water
There are so many references to water and what we can learn from water. You're 75% water. The planet is 75% water. We are water. The rest of us is just muscled water. It's all water. And water is soft. Water can enter anywhere. You get into a conflict with somebody else, and you picture yourself as water. You can enter with water in any place that there's an opening. If you can visualize yourself as a being who moves into the space of water, if you can see yourself that way, you can just enter into those places in the people that you love, in your children, in your spouse, in anyone at all, and enter there softly. Here's verse 8. The supreme good is water, which nourishes all things without trying to. And verse 78, right smack out of the Tao. Nothing in the world is softer and weaker than water. But for attacking the hard, the unyielding, nothing can surpass it. There is nothing like it. Here it is. I asked when they designed this set, this beautiful set, and thank you designers for this, I asked if I could have water on the stage. They did it. They figured it out. There's Now, I'm going to try to get some of this water, okay? So you get down here and you just, I'm going to just scoop this up. Okay, now tighter you hold it, the less chance you have of doing anything with it, isn't it? How can I experience water? The way to experience water is to just get soft. Just get unbending. And there it is. That's what water is. The minute I grasp it, the minute I try, and Lao Tzu is saying the same thing is true in everything in your life. The more you grasp, the more you try to hold on to it, the more you try to be rigid with it, the less control you have of it. In front of my place on Maui, there is a beautiful set of 11 or 12 palm trees. And these are like 30, 40, 50 feet tall. They've been there for, I don't know how long, decades. And when the winds come and when the storms come, the storms will blow them over. There they are, watch. And they're just these amazing elastic things. I learned so much from these things. I go out there, when I wrote the essay in the book on the verse 73, I just went out there with the palm trees and I would just commune with these palm trees. And they go all the way up and then they come all the way back. That's a symbol for how we need to think in our own lives. In verse 73 it says, "It is heaven's way to conquer without striving. It does not ask, yet it is supplied with all that it needs. It does not hurry, yet it completes everything on time." One of my favorite lines from the Tao, one of my favorite beliefs from the Tao is this, that you're doing nothing. All of you, you're doing nothing. You're just being done. Just like you were the first 9 months of your life. You think you're out there and you're making this happen and you're making that happen and you've got all these rigid things and you have to apply your life this way. You're not doing anything. Any more than you were having your fingernails show up when they were supposed to. And look at you. Look at all of you. Look around. You know, it's like, you know, what held it in yesterday? You know, I don't know. I'm not doing anything. They fall out and they don't fall out no matter how hard I try to keep them in there. Finally, my kid said, "Give it up. Give it up." So I was over in England, and they told me that I couldn't take my shampoo bottles on the plane. And there's nothing you can do about it. I said, "Yes, there is. I'll just shave my head. I no longer need shampoo." Okay, so we want to move from stiffness to flexibility. To change from thinking big to thinking small. It's so much of the Tao has in it statements that seem so paradoxical and so confusing to us. More is less. Less is more. Think small and get great things done. Accomplish great things. Listen to verse 64 of the Tao Te Ching. "A tree that fills a man's embrace grows from a seedling. A tower 9 stories high starts with 1 brick." And here's the most famous line out of the Tao. "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with what? The first step."
step.
One first step. Okay? So, today, I can stand up here on this stage in this beautiful sacred place, in this beautiful yin-yang symbol, on this incredibly beautiful set that feels so much like nature. And I can say to you that in a very short time, this year, I will have completed 20 years without taking a drink of alcohol. 20 years, okay? Now that's big. And if I would have tried, if I'd have said to myself 20 years ago, Wayne, you're going to quit drinking for the next 20 years, I would have gone immediately and had a drink. Because it's just too big, isn't it? It's just too big. You don't do big things. You do small things and thus accomplish great things. It's a very important distinction to make. Whatever it is that you would like to create or contribute or become in your life, take one step. How did I let drinking go for 20 years? And I don't even know about tomorrow. I never think about tomorrow and whether I'm going to have a drink. All I know for sure is that this won't be the day. I do it one day at a time. That's how you overcome anything called an addiction in your life. You take it, you reconnect yourself to the source from which you came, which is a source of what? Well-being, isn't it? And you get back and return, get on the return trip and say, I am connected to well-being. And I'll do this one day, 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 second if I have to, at a time. And when you do it, I mean, it's behind in all of the programs for overcoming addictions, and all of the work of Bill W., all of the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, all of the work of any kind of addictions. It isn't just alcohol. It can be food. It can be addiction to your emails. It can be addiction to work. It can be addiction to so many things that so many people find that they can't get past. And to move themselves into a place where I think small. I ran 7 marathons in my running years. And about the 22nd or 23rd mile, you begin to ask yourself about your sanity. And what am I doing here? And my body is breaking down. But the way that you finish the marathon is not by saying, I'm going to run 26 miles. You don't do that, especially when you've still got 5 or 6 to go. You just say to yourself, can I put my foot in front of the next one? Can I take one step at a time? Can I do it one step at a time? And before you know it, you've accomplished great things. I watched my wife give birth to 4 children right there in her in the delivery room with her. And she does not, you know, when you have a baby, it takes 9 months, doesn't it? You don't say to yourself, oh my God, I gotta have a baby, I gotta get pregnant, I gotta deliver it, I gotta go through labor, because that'll just drive you. And there are people who do that. And it's a torture for them. But I watched her do it one moment at a time in labor. Not what's going to happen an hour from now, what's going to happen this afternoon, am I going to have the... None of that. And she did it all naturally because it was all... And her mind was so strong as she was doing it that I couldn't even penetrate. I couldn't even communicate with her. She was so focused on just being here. She would say, these are not labor pains. These are just signals. Just signal. And I can take this signal. I can do this for 1 minute. I can do this. And every great athlete, I don't care who they are, they will always say, I can't think out there in big ways. I can only think small. Thinking small is what gets great things done. Verse 63. Achieve greatness in little things. Take on difficulties while they are still easy. Do great things while they are still small. The sage, one of my daughter's names, the sage, does not attempt anything very big and thus achieves greatness. Greatness comes from being in the moment, here, present, in the now. The sage confronts difficulties but never experiences them. This is the idea of thinking small.
I think I really think the real secret is that you have to
if you want to get to that higher place, you have to be asking, not what's in it for me and what can I have, but how can I offer to someone else that which I would like to have for myself, and not care about whether it shows up or not. And so the 4 virtues, according to Lao Tzu, are, and if you're living these, if you're, and this is what I talk about in my talks over and over again, if you want to get to meaning in your life, if you want to get to that field of intention and be there, what does the field of intention do? What does God do? What does Source do? What does Source energy look like? It looks like serving. It looks like giving. It asks nothing back. It wants nothing back from anybody else. It doesn't restrict it to anyone. It doesn't judge. It just offers. It offers abundance. It offers its sunlight. It offers kindness. It offers joy. It's like it's constantly doing this all the time, and it's only our egos or our connection to our attachment to this realm that I love the way he describes that in number 60. That as long as your shallow worldly ambitions exist, the door will not open. You know, so it's like you open doors by getting into virtue. When you look at the word Tao Te Ching, Tao means the way, T-E, Tao Te Ching, just means living the virtue. That's what it means. It's the virtue. And the virtues, according to Lao Tzu, are first, reverence for life, which manifests, that's for all of life, which manifests as love and respect for yourself and others. So a reverence, practicing a reverence for life, for others. A natural sincerity, which manifests as honesty, simplicity, and faithfulness. Gentleness, which manifests as just kindness and consideration for others. And supportiveness, being supportive of others, which manifests itself in service. Each one of these things I was doing in that moment without thinking about it. And the laws of the material world suddenly stopped. So it's like what I've discovered is that when I get my attention off of what's in it for me, which is where I was throughout the whole ambition phase of my life. How much am I going to make? How well am I going to do? How are other people going to perceive me? Blah, blah, how much is my stuff going to be worth? And blah, 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 blah. When I got off of that and onto how can I took a whole year to just live the Tao Te Ching, an entire year, 12 months, every day, just living it and practicing it and talking about it and meditating on it and so on. And I just kept getting more peaceful and easier. And more kept coming to me. Bigger and more and amounts and shinier and nicer and more money, more fame, more accolades, more all of that stuff, totally unattached to it. Like, don't even want to be bothered with it. It's just not it's not what I'm about. It's fun, watching it, and virtually everything that I make now I give away. Everything. No matter how much money I get paid, it's like I've already know that I don't really need anything else. My friend Byron Katie says that to believe that you need what you don't have is the definition of insanity. To believe that you need what you don't have. Because you're already here, so you've already proven that you don't need it. So to go around believing that I can't be happy, fulfilled, whatever it is, unless I get the stuff that I don't already have, it's a complete and total illusion. It's a thought that isn't even true. There's no truth to it whatsoever. You don't need anything. And when you get that, the irony is you're no longer attached. Your total life is just about living those virtues. How can I serve? How can I be sincere? How can I be gentle? How can I be supportive? And thinking like that. And that's how I think now. And because of that, I'm in meaning. And being in meaning, the times that I was in ambition, is delivering more and more and more and more of what I wanted so much then. And now that I'm not attached to it, it's like I can be like the cat. I can just go about my business and just let it follow after me wherever I go.
And what is the power of the source? The power to heal. The most intriguing thing that I think I learned about healing was from Joel Goldsmith's The Foundations of Mysticism. He said that healing is something that takes place because you bring spirit to the disease process. And he said these words, and this sounds a little strange: disease is an illusion. Disharmony is an illusion. Discord is an illusion. Because if it's not of God, it doesn't exist. And if it's not good, it's not of God. And therefore, that which is not good cannot exist because God creates everything. So the only reason that we believe that it exists is because it is something we create in our minds or through our minds. And when we learn to change our mind about it, it's like it's an error in thinking. And spirit nullifies disease, brings spirit to it. It's like in mathematics, 2 times 2 is 4, has substance. It's always 4. 2 times 2 is 9, has no substance. And you can say it, but the way that you eliminate it is by correcting it. The minute that you correct the error, it disappears. It's gone. And it's in the correction of the error, and that's why one of the most important prayers, and the one that I wrote an essay about in here, is from St. Francis. You know, I never understood this prayer until I read the Foundations of Mysticism about healing. And this is probably the most widely used prayer in the world. He says, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. That is, bring love to hatred and hatred disappears. That's healing. Where there is injury, pardon. Bring that to injury and injury disappears. Where there is doubt, faith or knowing. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. In other words, you correct the error of the illusion of disharmony, discord, and disease by bringing spirit to it.
I'd like you to play over and over again. The words to that are very powerful words. Make me a channel of your peace. It's not a prayer. It's not a religious statement. It is a beautiful technology for teaching us to bring the presence of higher, spiritual, divine, organizing intelligence to the presence of every energy that is not of this source. Every energy of hatred, anger, fear, worry. And we need it in the world more than we've ever needed it before.
So this, to me, is a prescription for world peace. To have peace within ourselves. Peace, understanding, compassion, forgiveness, and most of all, love. We have the power within us to affect these changes. Love is something we can choose, the same way we choose anger or hate or sadness. We can choose love. It's always a choice within us. Let's begin right now in this moment to choose love. It's the most powerful healing force there is.
The 79th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Quote, after a bitter quarrel, some resentment remains. What can one do about it? Being content with what you have is always best in the end. Someone must risk returning injury with kindness, or hostility will never turn to goodwill. So the wise always give without expecting gratitude. One with true virtue always seeks a way to give. One who lacks true virtue always seeks a way to get. To the giver comes the fullness of life. To the taker, just an empty hand. Unquote. Living without resentments. In this verse, which has been so helpful to me personally, you're asked to change the way you hold resentments following a difference of opinion or an outright quarrel. Now, what causes annoyance and anger after a dispute? The generic response would be a laundry list that's detailed why the other person was wrong and how illogically and unreasonably they behaved, concluding with something like, I have a right to be upset when my daughter, my mother, my husband, my ex-husband, my boss, whomever, speaks to me that way. But if you're interested in living a Tao-filled life, it's imperative that you reverse this kind of thinking. Resentments don't come from the conduct of the other party in an altercation. No, they survive and thrive because you're unwilling to end that altercation with an offering of kindness, love, and authentic forgiveness. Lao Tzu says, someone must risk returning injury with kindness or hostility will never turn to goodwill. So when all of the yelling, screaming, and threatening words have been expressed, the time for calm has arrived. Remember that no storm lasts forever, and that hidden within are always seeds of tranquility. There is a time for hostility, and there is a time for peace. As the storm of a quarrel subsides, you must find a way to disregard your ego's need to be right. It's time to extend kindness by letting go of your anger. It's over, so offer forgiveness to yourself and the other person and encourage resentment to dissipate. Be the one seeking a way to give in the sense that Lao Tzu describes in this verse, rather than the one looking for something to get. I run a large enterprise based on the wisdom found in this profound verse. My company is all about giving, so if there are any disputes about product sales, my assistant knows to let the other party have whatever they desire. If someone can't afford something, I give it away. I allow recordings of my talks and ask nothing in return. I give of my time for photographs, autographs, or anything at all. Unless I have a plane to catch, I'm the last person out of the auditorium, and I'm willing to talk with anyone who makes such a request after one of my talks. It's all about giving, and those who work for me know this and live by these principles. When I asked an outsider to be a part of my speaking tour not long ago, I encountered a man who was a tremendously gifted musician and an entertainer, yet was living in scarcity. Despite his enormous talent, abundance just wasn't flowing into his life. After a few of our speaking dates, I noticed his inclination to be a taker rather than a giver. He consistently looked for ways to make more money on the side, excluding everyone else who was working to provide a service to those who attended the lecture. I had a long discussion with this man about how his profiteering rather than offering was blocking the flow of abundance into his life, and I encouraged him to trust in the wisdom that Lao Tzu provides. The point here is that this was an opportunity for both of us to proceed on the tour without any resentments. Regardless of anyone else's attitude, if you live with true virtue, you'll seek a way to give. This truth completely aligns with the Tao. After all, the creator of life is always giving, never taking. So change the way you think about scarcity and resentment, and begin to truly feel the question, how may I serve? The universe will seem to respond, finally you got it. You're acting like me. I'll keep that flow coming into your life in ways that will astound and delight you. As Lao Tzu says, quote, to the giver comes the fullness of life, to the taker, just an empty hand, unquote. Here's what Lao Tzu encourages you to do to make the wisdom of the 79th verse your reality. First, end on love no matter what. Picture yourself at the termination of a quarrel or major dispute. Rather than acting with old patterns of residual anger, revenge, and hurt, visualize offering kindness, love, and forgiveness. Do this right now by sending out these true virtue thoughts to any resentments you're currently carrying. Make this your standard response to any future altercations. I end on love, no matter what. And secondly, practice giving. In the midst of arguments or disagreements, practice giving rather than taking before you exit the fracas. Offer the Tao treasures of real virtues by presenting kindness rather than a put-down, or a sign of respect instead of proving someone else wrong. Giving involves leaving the ego behind. While it wants to win and show its superiority by being contrary and disrespectful, your Tao nature wants to be at peace and live in harmony. You can reduce your quarreling time to almost zero if you practice this procedure. Do the Tao now. Silently recite the following words from the prayer of St. Francis. Quote, where there is injury, let me bring pardon. Unquote. Be a giver of forgiveness, as he teaches. Bring love to hate, light to darkness, and pardon to injury. Read these words daily, for they'll help you overcome your ego's demands and know the fullness of life.